Now let's look at what we can make with aspidistra. A broad leaf like this sometimes is just too big to use in an arrangement, and we need to figure out what we can do to create something that's a little more interesting. And we're going to look at how to make a rose. But I've made two roses here that I wanted to show you that how important it is when we trim off the vein on the back of the aspidistra leaf that we get it really good, because when you go to roll it, as you can see in this one, that it becomes hard and will often crack, and the center of that doesn't look as well as you would like it to. So what you want to do is make sure you get as much of that out of there, so when we go to roll our leaf, it'll make it smooth and more like a rose. So on the back side of the leaf, now this one I've already trimmed, I go about 1/3 of the way up and trim away that vein. So you want to take your knife, whether you want to lay it down on your table or whether you want to hold it in your hand. Now I'm the type of person that has to hold things in their hand. And I'm going to start cutting away that vein. If you feel it and it still feels really hard, you can go back and cut another layer off. Just trim it very carefully if you're holding it in your hand so that you don't cut yourself, like I've done many times. But after I've made a few of these, I've figured out how to cut it without cutting my finger. So just be real careful with that. So now we have our leaf that no longer stands up, and we know that's got enough of that vein taken away. So we're going to start by folding our leaf in half. Now it doesn't have to have a hard crease in it, but you do want it folded just about in half. And then we're going to fold this side down in a 90-degree turn. And that's going to give us our stem for our rose, and our aspidistra should be sticking out to the side. Then we're going to roll it. We're going to form the bud in the center of the rose. And once you've turned it a couple of times, you can start with the folding of the leaf. So you're going to take your hand and turn the leaf over. And that's going to put the two sides up. And then the next turn that you make will take it back to the bottom. And you can see our rose is starting to take shape. Continue the process until you've created your rose. Now at this point, we can finish off our rose, or we can take a second leaf. This one I have pre-deveined and I've cut off the end. And I'm going to make this rose a little bit fatter. I'm going to fold it in half, insert it into the other leaf, and continue the process. The first time I did this, just with one leaf, I think it took me about 2 days to get it where it looked halfway like a rose. But with practice, and you can practice with the same leaf, you don't have to start over again, but just practice over and over, because you know practice makes permanent. It doesn't make things perfect, it makes things permanent. So if you practice something wrong, then you're going to learn it wrong. So be sure to, when you practice the technique correctly. So when we've come down here, we can just take our stem tape and tape off our rose. And I'm going to give it a little bit of a swirl here to give it a little more shape, and trim off our stem. Now these are great. What do we do with them? We have several of these made now. I'm going to take our arrangement that has our flax that's bent, and I'm going to take out the roses. And I'm going to insert our aspidistra roses in their place. That's the wrong one. Again, I've clustered the roses just like the fresh roses were to give a focal point in your arrangement. And that's really great for when you're in competitions or going for certifications. You think about different techniques that you can use, and when you spend time making an aspidistra rose or even bending the flax, whatever techniques that you've used, you want to make sure that they're the focal, they're not hidden down into things, and they really stand out, because that will help get you more points and help you on your progress for your certification. I hope you like what we did with the aspidistra. This size is the size of flax rose that I make for boutonnieres. As you can see, this is more appropriate for the lapel, or you can even put several of them together if you need to make it a little bit larger. But the trend in weddings is more greenery. The trend in weddings is using more foliage throughout the wedding, and this is a great way to incorporate that into the boutonnieres. Now, if you don't want to use the flax, we're going to look at all the different things that we can make with lily grass. This is a lily grass rose. Unfortunately, we don't have time to make this today, but this is one of the techniques that we learned during class. But what else can we do with our lily grass? Let's look at a very simple technique of weaving. This is actually the edge of ribbon that I have used to weave through the grass. I was working on a wedding and I couldn't find the right shade of rust ribbon, and I found this. It was a beautiful sheer, but it had this copper edge on it. So I cut off all the copper edge, and I said, well, I'm going to hang on to it because there might be something I can do with it. And I went to make this today, and I thought, oh man, that copper ribbon would really be pretty in that. So this is actually the edge of the copper ribbon, the wired edge that I have woven through the grass. Doing things like that, especially during certification or competition, figuring out another way to use something will always give you points if you do it, and they have to think about, well, where did they get that? We didn't give them that. It's not a wire, it's not bullion, it's where did they get it? So make your judges think about where it came from. You can do this with any width, any number of pieces of lily grass, but for today I'm going to show you with 3, and it's simply going over, under, over, under. Now, it's more important to line up the tips of your lily grass than the ends, because you want the tips to all end at about the same time, so you're not having some stopping way down here and some here, and it just gives you a more finished look. So we're going to go over, under, over. Now, if you want to go under, over, under, you can. Just make sure that you're always doing the same pattern throughout the weave. Another thing that you want to watch for is, while you're doing this, you don't want to have part of it all close up together and then all of a sudden that you've spread it out a ½ inch apart. You want to keep the weave as even as you can. If you're going along and you notice, oh, I've got that too far spread out, you can adjust it just a little bit as you go along to fix that. But make sure that you're watching for that as you're doing the weave. Now, of course, as we talked about earlier, the first time you do something always takes you longer. Normally, I don't cut, if I'm using bullion or ribbon, I don't cut it off the spool, but because this was something I had cut, thrown in the trash, and realized that's money I just put in my trash can, I'm going to get it out and figure out what I can do with it. So I have pieces of this cut that I am using. And the piece is about twice as long as my lily grass. So I know I'll have enough to make it all the way to the end of the lily grass. This time of year, the copper looks really pretty with the dark green lily grass and can be used as accents and just gives that a little pop. With burgundies and blushes and creams, all of that comes in real well, and you can add oranges into it as well. So we're just about to the end of this piece of lily grass, and I've got to tighten up my weave just a little bit there. As you get closer to the end, kind of think about if you're going to attach it to something or if you're going to insert it down into the oasis. In the arrangement here, I knew I was going to attach it to the stems, so I left my wire long enough to wrap around the stem. But if I know I'm going to be inserting it into the oasis, then I can finish it off and attach it to, instead of using a wooden pick, I usually pick up a stem off the floor and tie it to the floor to save that little bit of money. So we're down to the end. We're gonna catch all of them together, twist it around a few times. And because I know I'm gonna add it into this arrangement, I'm gonna leave the ribbon just a little bit longer. I can insert it and come around and figure out exactly, do I want to bring it low, do I want it high, where do I want to add this to. Doing little things like this adds a lot of drama to your arrangement, giving it dimension. This is not a static line, it's very dynamic and gives you a sense of implied motion throughout your arrangement. It also updates your arrangement. Again, this is a very simple arrangement, very clean lines, and by adding this weave throughout the arrangement all the way around, it doubles the size of the arrangement. So what else can we do with lily grass? It's one of my favorite types of foliage. Whenever I start a technique, whether it's braiding or weaving or sewing, I like to start with lily grass because it's big enough to see what you're doing, and I can learn the technique, and then I can change it down to bear grass or steel grass or change it over into Middleino, whatever I need to do. I start with lily grass. We're going to look at this braid. This braid is done with 5 pieces of lily grass. And as you can see, it flips back and forth, showing the front of the grass as well as the back of the grass. Now this braid is very difficult the first time you do it. I'm just going to be real honest about that. I had a class that was nearly in tears trying to learn how to do it. But when you get it, you've got it, and you can do it with 5 pieces, 7 pieces, 9 pieces. So just hang with it, and just remember, it gets easier every time you practice it. So again, I'm not concerned about the ends of the lily grass lining up. I'm more concerned with the tips of the lily grass. The first thing I do is I take my lily grass, and if I can leave it out of the cooler and out of water for a couple of days where it'll get soft, I'll do that. But if I can't, then I'll just take my hand and bend it like this and soften it up and make it much more pliable. So when I think I have it where I need it to be, we can start our braid. I have to put my glasses on for this one. We're going to hold 3 pieces of our braid in one hand and 2 pieces in the other. We're going to take the grass and we're going to fold it up and over. And now I'm going to hold 4 pieces of grass in one hand and just have this one sticking out. I'm always working from the very outside to the center. So the outside one, over, under, over. And the very first few are going to be still stiff because of where they are on the lily grass, but you should have 3 pieces in one hand and 2 pieces in the other. Again, from the outside in, over, and then to the other side, over, under, over. And if you notice, when I turn my grass, this piece is facing down. When I turn it, it's going to be, the front side will be up. So each time you're going to turn it. Over, under, over. And you get this chant going in your head, over, under, over, and keep going. Once you get the technique, you can move much faster. And like I did, I just messed up right there. I can go back to where the braid is correct. If I notice that it's curving too much, I can stop at any time and just ease the blades of grass where they need to be. So I'm back to where I need to be with my braid, and I can start the braid again and continue. It's really important to watch where you are in the braid so that you don't change the pattern, especially in competition. You want to show them that you can do a technique and do it really well. The same with certification. Again, take your time, learn the technique, learn how to do it well. Starting with 5 pieces for this braid is a great start. You've always wondered how to do it. So just start small and work your way up. I've used this same technique again with a wedding with a little flower girl that the bride wanted her to carry a pomander, and I made the handle. It was very, again, with lots of greenery for the wedding. And I took the sphere, I left it dry, and covered it in moss and bind wire, and added this as the handle for her to carry it by. Pinned it in good to the orb and added some more mosses and a few leaves and bind wire, and just made it very organic. So this is a great technique to use for that. You can also use this technique in arrangements, as we're going to look at when I get this made in this arrangement, giving more dimension and size. And it doesn't have to just be for cut flowers or weddings. We can also use this in plants. When we add it into plants, you need to plan again how the tip will be secured, and we want to leave a little extra of our wire or ribbon, whatever you're going to use, to be able to tie it on to the plant. So now that we're at the end, we're about as far as we can go. We're going to gather that together. We're going to give it a little tug every now and then just to straighten that out. And I'm going to bind it with this purple wire, like this. I can cut away the stems at this point, and I'm going to add a small pick to this just to make it easier to show you today. You could have taped that really good with stem tape, but we can take this now and add this to a plant, making your plant stand out from the competition. Again, we want to add the wire, as neatly as possible, make it look like it's been machined onto the plant. And secured firmly. I've got another one that I had already done, and it could be added as well to the same side, to the other side. We could bring it up and over and let it cross. but I'm just going to attach it right here below the first one that I did. You want to always be careful to get this binding point onto your plant and make that look really neat and as professional finish as you can. Taking this arrangement, it's again a very simple paved arrangement with the roses and sunflowers. I used magnolia leaves, but I flipped them upside down, and I've taken the same weave and I've added it across the top of the arrangement. This adds, again, a dynamic line, something that's a static arrangement, being paved low in the container like this, and adding more depth and dimension to it. I hope you've enjoyed today. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. I want to say thank you to Floriology for hosting me today, and to learn more tips and techniques on braiding and weaving and leaf manipulation or anything else. Floriology Now is a great new learning platform. Be sure to go to floriologyinstitute.com. That's the only thing you have to remember. All of the information is on that page. You can learn all kinds of great techniques, tips, and tricks. Thank you for joining us.